stopped the recording, so we'll start back up. So here's the agenda. And then the people that are on this webinar are Todd Castle. He's our CEO, but he's more level we like to have him on the CTO side because his prowess as far as that goes. We also have Eric Castle, and yes, they are brothers. He's a senior technical consultant as well. And Eric's actually a DBA system admin as well, and Todd's a programmer as well as, you know, dealing with loss and an expert. I'm going to let Todd talk a little bit more about his background, but that's pretty much, I wanted to kind of give you the intro of how we're going. So Todd, if you
unmuted
away, that'd be great.
All right, so I'm going to assume everyone can hear me okay right now. I'm on a speakerphone, and if, you know, maybe Bill, if you want to tell me you can't hear me okay.
Yes.
I'm good?
Yes, you're great.
All right. So for those of you who don't know me, Todd Castle, I've been working in the Lawson world since 1996. I noticed someone on the attendee list who's known me at least since then, maybe from before then. And so glad to have you on the call here with us, Larry. And then pretty much technical the entire time. Just my entire background with the Lawson Infor world is technical. I used to actually, believe it or not, train the trainers, train the installers. It's been a very long time with the Infor Lawson world. Real quick, additional housekeeping. You will have the ability to type in questions inside your console window there, as Bill had said. Eric is on the call, and he will try to answer those questions while we're going through this, so it's not distracting me. Can't think of anything else right now. I really want to get moving and get started on this, so I'm going to jump forward. First of all, I want to address just the different notices that came out for Infor for this ADFS issue. And I'm going to actually pull some onto the screen. The first initial one that we saw that came out in March 3rd was from the security token services telling you kind of the end of support. And everyone saw this. This started everyone sending us emails, at least our clients. I started getting questions about what does this actually mean for them. We had to, you know, address a few. We have a few people actually that are still running on the SSOP, and they're on old, just an old version of the security. They haven't upgraded things, and they're even on old versions of the environment, haven't moved forward yet. So some of those didn't really apply to, so we really had to read this through and address this at that level to say, what does this really mean for you? And we're going to get into a little more of that. So obviously you're on this call because you received a message like this. You do have until March 1st, 2019. I would definitely say don't wait till then. There's a lot of reasons to move forward now. They do recommend you contacting Infor Consulting Services for this work, and we'll explain why. I'm going to pull over another email that you also received, and that would have been the knowledge base article that talks about how do you even figure out which version are you on, or which authentication mode are you on. And this is the actual knowledge base article. So you remember seeing this. You're on one of those following methods. You're either using the LS as STS, which is the Lawson security with the token security or security token services. You're currently using ADFS, or you're in Kerberos. There is one other option, as you can see in the resolution below. For those that say verify passwords in Lawson security, that's where there's no LDAP bind setup, there's no ADFS or Kerberos setup. So they're actually using passwords that are stored inside the Lawson LDAP. So at the very bottom, it does say this migration is complex, and I'm going to be showing you a little bit about that and why it is complex. So I would recommend definitely contacting someone that can help you. And again, I'll tell you why as we go on. And Bill, let me know if I need to slow down. You're the only other person I think that can talk on here. So let me just pipe in and say, Todd, either slow down or speed up. And let's see. Oh, so from that article, it also tells you how to find out that information. So you're going to have in your SSOP service, you're going to have one of these primary target lookups. And let's go ahead and jump into that. I'm going to connect to one of our systems locally. I was connected to it earlier. I had someone kick me off of it, so I'm jumping back in. Hopefully there's nothing strange on the screen, and there's not. So it's a very simple process, and I want to make sure that everyone understands how to do it. So running your SSO config utility and logging into it. If you don't know the password, you're going to have to find that out from someone. Hopefully I know the password.
Hey, Todd, can you make that a little bigger? Like so we can see it a little bigger?
It's huge on my screen, but the answer is yes.
Okay.
But I do have a huge screen. But thanks, Bill. Let's change that font. I don't know what a good one will be. Let's do this one. How's that look?
Thank you.
Okay. So you very simply go into number 5, which is manage your loss and services. Number 6, which is export. Number 2, which means no, you don't want all of the services. You only want your SSOP service, and you want none of the identities for them. Give it a name, and it's done. I will do a quick type of that todd1.xml file, and what we have set up in here, we happen to jump in a system that I'm showing here is I've already switched over. And so as you can tell in my primary target lookup, it's already showing it's use claim based. And so yours would show either that if you're using ADFS or one of the other methods shown here. All right, so that was really quick. And again, if you want these instructions for some reason, you want just this simple list I just gave, just send that off to an email to Bill. He'll make sure that we get that to you. Very simple process. Really quickly, I want to talk about ADFS. I'm not going to spend a lot of time describing what it is. Active Directory Federation Services. I'm actually going to read this. It's a feature of Windows operating system that extends user single sign-on to access applications and systems outside of the corporate firewall. In essence, external systems you can configure to allow authentication with your internal Active Directory or your internal authentication system. So initially I was wondering why everything was going to go this way and why we were going to switch over to use ADFS instead of just keeping the status quo. However, if you think about products like Office 365 for Microsoft, you're basically logging in with an ADFS service. And as you think about more and more systems that are moving to cloud-based, but still need authentication to a local directory services, you're needing this functionality so that you can connect to, let's say, the global HR that's hosted on Infor Cloud and still authenticate to your local AD. And so it totally makes sense. We're going to talk quickly through the prerequisites, and if someone can also keep the timing for me, so we don't, I don't go past my allotted time. Anytime I'm getting out of a track, Bill, just kind of say, "Give me something, please." So
yes, I'll do that. And if you want to do the polls, just let me know when you want to do the polls too. Okay.
Will do. Thank you. So for all of the Infor products you have installed, and we'll see a list of the ones that, as I show you part of the compatibility matrix later, they do need to be running SSL. At the time that you go into actually set up your endpoint in ADFS, if you don't type in HTTPS first, it will tell you this won't work. And so we've tried it other ways. We've tried it many ways just to see if we can pretty much break the system. On our own systems, we've tried everything we can to make sure that we can get it working and figure out reasons why it wouldn't work. So you also need to be at I'd say the latest environment level and patch level or latest release level of the other products. You should be at a latest level anyway. Some people are on older versions, some clients. I would say get up to the newer versions as quickly as possible. We will talk about that compatibility. However, the Lawson environment is at 10.007 minimum level, and Landmark technology, it's at 10.1116 minimum level. And again, this is for ADFS 3.0. ADFS 2 or versions before 3.0 can have slightly less versions of the environment and Landmark. Inside your domain, you're going to need to have an authentication system. We're talking Active Directory. You will have to have an instance of ADFS, admin access, or at least an admin that can enter passwords and usernames properly to give you access, and then a search user. This is sort of like your LDAP bind search user. And from the research that I've done, it actually could be that same user. It's the user that has capability to just search your LDAP tree. This is what I found from the compatibility matrix from March 2nd of this year. And so you can pull this up off the Infor Extreme site. However, 10.007, 10.1116 for Landmark, and there's your other products. Essentially, these are all the products that will have some sort of access and connection into to the backend Lawson authentication system. I'm not going to spend much time here. All right, I'm going to pull up a live system and quickly show you ADFS. Give me just a second on this. And where is my?
While you're doing that, Todd, I'm gonna do the polls real quick because this would be perfect timing for that. Okay.
Go for it.
So if you guys could answer this, that'd be great. Just so I have a good understanding. Okay. That's good. Most of you are on 10.07 or greater, and that's excellent. Okay. Excellent. All right, I'm gonna close that out because most of you are on that. That's good to know. Let's go with the second one, which you'll understand why this is there. Okay. So what Landmark version are you on?
All right. So if I can do another housekeeping thing, Sarah, it seems as though I can't reshare my screen here. I paused it.
Hi, Todd. Yeah. Hi, everyone. So while the poll is happening, just a webinar tip and trick, while the poll's happening, you can't actually show your screen. So as soon as that's done, you should be able to show your screen again.
Thank you. Didn't know that. Interesting feature. Thanks, sir.
Okay. I think we're done. I think we're pretty much done with this, Todd. Most are at 10.1.116 or greater. So, so just to get an idea, the majority are at the later versions. There are some that are at the other versions, and that's fine. Like Todd was saying, you want to get up to as close as possible. So there you go. Now I think you should be able to share your screen.
All right. So over to our live system. I'm going to actually show you quickly ADFS. And then we're going to jump in the Lawson side. I'm going to take a very small amount of time here. And so ADFS is actually a feature or a role inside your Windows system. So really the installation of it is just as quick as this right here, and it'll get us started. The part about actually, sorry, it switched back over. That should have stayed right there. The next part will actually be setting up your ADFS. And so that's one other poll question I should have actually had Bill add to the list. And maybe he can, and we can do this question as well. If you currently have an ADFS instance running at your site or not, because you can connect into an existing ADFS, or you can create an additional ADFS instance on your system. And so I don't know, Bill, if that's something you can do while we're doing this, or if we just have to not worry about it right now. So once ADFS role is installed, it actually lets you just start the Federation Services installation. And very simple. I believe I actually have access to this, don't I, Eric? If I get my password right. And we will grab a certificate. I don't have a certificate on here, Eric. And so, not sure that I'll be able to get this through fast enough. And so, yeah, but that's missing that certificate, and I'm not sure where that certificate happens to be on the system. We may have to skip this one part of the setup. Unless, Sarah, you want to give Eric control really quick and he wants to do it.
I just put it into the chat window where it's located.
Oh, you're so smart. SP1, C admin. SP1, C admin. And not finding any in here. So, another 5 seconds here.
Try LSF1.
Don't have C.
This may be a good time to ask that question, maybe with a raise of hands. I don't recall the question you had as far as a poll question.
The question? Oh, that would be who currently has a ADFS server installed that they know of.
Does any of you, with a show of hands, anybody have an ADFS system that they know of? This is always the fun part of a live demo of something, so bear with us for a second. Yes, there's one person that does, actually two people. It's about 10%. Todd?
Okay. Well, I've now given up on giving this here. Unless Eric's saying it's done now. All right. Canceling that wizard. Basically, once you have ADFS set up, I am going to show you because I'm actually going to. We've seen how quickly we can do work on the fly here. It's almost actually on the server now. But I'm seeing if I can get into our other server really quick. By the way, I didn't mention this. The Federation services, it's recommended that is installed on a separate server. However, talking with Infor the other day, support, they basically said don't put it on your Lawson Core Technology server. A lot of people are putting it on their SharePoint server because it's kind of a logical place to put it if they don't already have it installed. And so, not a bad idea. Just pick a location where you can have that installed and running and not shut down. The service account that you do need to use for accessing it and for starting it up is actually an actual service account where the password has to be set to not expire or at least to control that. And so as you can see here, ours is set up to be running as a new user we created called ADFS user. That is a service account and the passwords are controlled on the system. So they don't expire, because as soon as it expires, of course, you can no longer access your system, just like your LDAP-bind user, your search user. If that expires, you get those crazy error messages in your logs, and nobody can access the system anymore. So I just showed you real quickly one instance is installed. I'm going to move on and assume that this may come back to life at some point. Right? References that I used for moving forward with this. I did use 2 different references. A few other areas, searching Google for the ADFS information. However, your auth guide, your authentication guide for 10.009 is your latest that I found, that actually has all of your the setup for ADFS and how to do it. It does span over several pages, as you'll see when I get into it. So it is a little bit, it is somewhat complicated, again, as you'll see. And we can send out, by the way, those references in a follow-up email to everyone. So here's a quick overview of the setup on the Infor side. So you will have to modify your LS service properties file to add some information if it's not already there. You will back up your SSOP service and modify it. You're basically removing all of your LDAP-bind information and putting it to claim-based. You will back up your SSOP identities, and those will need to be modified. You're going to load in a certificate that you created on your ADFS system, create a new ADFS service, add a whole bunch of claims and service properties, and then create a new federation certificate. Finally, it's not listed here. You've got to just tie it all together. If you've done any work where you've put the security, the LS as STS together on your Mingle server, where once you kind of get everything in place, you have to then tie it all together. You have to do a similar thing at the end of this. You have to just make sure that everything's talking to the proper locations. And we're going to just talk about that overview real quick. The changes themselves are not easy to back out. And so having a backup of everything that you're doing, as I said, backup and then modify your SSOP service, backup and then modify your SSOP identities. Make sure you save that backup because if you have to somehow get back to the old LDAP-bind or LSS-STS, you're going to need to put some things back in place, and some of the process has you deleting and recreating the WS Federation certificate, which means you'll have to end up doing that again. So backing out is not an easy thing. It definitely can be done. Of course, if you have a virtual system, taking a snapshot of beforehand is the best way to get back to where you were. Tedious, not for the faint-hearted. We've said for a long time in installing and configuring all the Lost Infor products that it's not a science, it's an art. You can do the exact same install on 2 of the exact same servers, and they do not install the same way. We've never figured out why. We just know that there's certain things you have to figure out as you go. And sometimes everything works out exactly as the documentation shows, exactly as all of your prior notes show. Sometimes it doesn't. So the entire process can take a few hours. We usually allow a few more hours to debug. Also throw in here, since I didn't talk about it, it does take time to set up and configure your ADFS instance. And if you're not already on SSL, it takes time to get everything switched over to SSL. So you might have to plan this in phases to get everything where it needs to be so that you can finish the process. So to say all that, someone who really knows the process should do it, and not someone who's brand new to it and trying to figure it out, unless you just glutton for punishment. So it's again, an interesting process. So I'm going to go through actually a couple of the changes. We're going to try to keep this short so that we can have some time for some questions, but here's an example. And these are only examples I'm going to show you. You're changing your SSOP service from something to something else. You're basically removing everything related to your LDAP bind. And so as you can tell in here, the primary target lookup says use LDAP binds, and then you have all your LDAP bind information in here. You're switching it over to use claim-based, and then putting in just the information needed for that. It actually makes the service a bit easier to look at. You're changing your identities for the SSOP. Instead of just having a user, for example, the Lawson user as the name Lawson, you're actually adding in the @ and your domain. There are a couple different ways that it says that it can be done. It says that you can actually put in there the domain / your user ID. We chose to go this way. And if you want to know more about that, Eric can tell you why in the little chat window if you have that question. So the new ADFS service that has to be created, here's a sample of it. This actually pulled right from the documentation from Infor, and we just modified it, of course, to have our information for our site. Then there's a bunch of claims and service properties that have to be created. Again, these are in the documentation. Multiple steps going through this. It'd be great if, in fact, I was just asked yesterday to go ahead and create an LDIF file to load these in. And so I might create an LDIF file to make this process a little easier. So some claims, some service properties. So you have to actually create service properties for the ADFS. So these are definitely quite a bit of typing or copying and pasting. And even more service properties for your SSOP identity. And then finally, like I said, you have to tie all of this together. So tying it all together, loading the new certificates, creating new federation certificates, loading and downloading things from your core technology server into SharePoint. We found that we had to restart services several times. We actually had to reboot the server several times. make this work. And then we had to, again, we've gone through it a few times. There was a couple times where we just had to restore the whole snapshot and start over because just things would not come up properly. It wouldn't recognize that ADFS was installed. And so we, again, have run into issues. We've worked through issues. We pretty much know what's going on and how to make it all flow together. And then finally your results. Here's what you had before. You go to log in, you've got your Infor login box, username, password. You're putting in most likely your SAM account name from your Active Directory and your password, and there you're in. The new system will look something like this. We added some customizations. It is a Microsoft product. ADFS allows you to do customizations. And so, for example, the login here that I put in was use the jksava.com. This could be just the T-Castle. You could set up to just use part of it. You can use many different formats, but that's all part of the customization. The logos, there's copyright information that's on the bottom of this that Microsoft says if you don't want that on there, just remove it. It's actually okay to remove it. I think on our site we actually have a help button that we put at the bottom, a help link that takes us to our internal help desk software. And so kind of changes the look of it. I mean, from the old way, or I guess the newer old way, to the new look of it. And let's wrap this up and get on to some questions. And so I did save a little time not stepping through a few of the ADFS pieces. If people want me to jump into a little more of the installing and setting up ADFS, I was informed the certificate's out there. It's ready for me to just jump through that piece of it. But you will have to somehow put in a chat window or something and say, hey, we want to see this, or Bill will have to take some kind of poll. Because we do have, we probably have an extra five or so minutes, which is what it'll take. And maybe someone from Infor that's on can correct me on this if needed. If you contact Infor Extreme for support on getting all of this set up, they're going to refer you to Infor Consulting Services. I don't think they can support doing this, just like they wouldn't support an installation. They're not going to basically say, here's how you install your Infor products, here's how you install your Landmark products. They're not going to say, here's how you completely configure your ADFS setup. They just don't have the resources to do it. And best thing to do is find someone who's done it, who knows how to do it. Infor Consulting Services, jksava. Find someone you like, someone you trust, and let them do it again. You're only going to do it one time. Once you get this set up, once it's all configured, you're not going to do it again. And so going through the headache potentially of you figuring it all out on your own might be worth having someone spend a day doing it for you.
Hey Todd, we are getting a couple things. We are getting people saying yes, they would like us to cover the install the ADFS setup. And I think we do have about 5 minutes before we can, we have time for that. So if you would do that. Also, I did get a response from Scott Hansen, who is the Director of Technical Services. He did confirm that you said they will refer to ICS. So, which makes sense.
Totally. I just guessed on that one. It was an assumption I made, but from 20 plus years experience, they don't actually have the resources to support it. So,
well, yeah, it's not just your quick thing. That makes sense that would happen. So, okay. So yeah, if you could do that, that'd be great. Go through that setup, or the install, whatever you want to call it. So that'd be helpful. People are asking.
All right, I'm jumping over to it now. All right, back onto the server I was on before. I've been informed that I do have a certificate that's sitting out there. Let's see if we do. And this is something that we can share some of the setup as well. This is also something an administrator of your domain would need to set up, or at least have passwords for. So I'm creating the first federation server in this farm. So if there are others, you can join to it, or you can create a standalone farm. I am going to have this, since I am an administrator on this box, or a domain administrator, JK Seva. I'm going to use my credentials, unless someone took that away from me in the last few minutes. I am going to import a certificate. I've been told it's under cadmin. Hey, there's our wildcard certificate. Oh, and hopefully put the password here somewhere. Actually, I know it. I'm going to guess it. Let me guess. Oh, incorrect guess. Let's try another one. No, wonder how many times I can guess that. Hey, I figured it out. That's because someone typed it into my chat window. I'm going to call this FS. Should I call this FS2? Since I'm on, yeah. Since we're not going to conflict with something else. Eric, can you set up FS2 maybe in DNS, since we already have an FS? And I'm just going to call this JK Seva Federation Services. And you can just call it JKC. You can call it whatever you'd like. An example just shows a simple company name. It did notice that I don't have any group managed accounts, so I can't actually have it create something here. I'm going to use an account name that I know already exists. This one would be ADFS user .net, I believe. Yes, it is. And you have the ability, as you're installing this, to actually put this onto a SQL server that you already have set up, or it will create an internal, it calls it a Windows internal database, which is kind of interesting because we looked into it, and that's actually a very, very small subset of of SQL Server Express. So almost like a sub Express. Anyway, a very small footprint of a database. You can only have 5 different servers or instances in the farm if you're using internal database. And so if you're going to have something bigger, then you definitely would use a separate database server. Again, I'm going to use default here. And review all my selections. I like it. If I want to see my little scripts that it creates for me, this all can be done, by the way, in PowerShell. If I wanted to look at the PowerShell scripts, I'm not going to. It says everything's good to go. So I'm clicking on the go. I'm going to pause my screen and look at my instructions to make sure I've got everything else I need here. So I think if I change screens, it makes this go away. And so again, this installation does go relatively fast. I think last time it only took a minute or 2 at the most. Okay, so that part was finished. Back showing my screen. it finished that piece. It's all configured. I can jump into my ADFS configuration. Actually, I think even after that's done, hopefully it's not going to jump over to my PowerPoint. It's not. I'm going to double check that finished. There is a little test URL I can put in here. And I'm assuming potentially I'm going to use Chrome, I think. Keep using an Explorer. And let's see how if Eric set up FS2 really quickly here. He did. So basically, this shows that ADFS is installed, it's configured, you can do this sign in. It actually doesn't do much of anything right now. Let's do net and sure, why not? So it signed me in. So that means my Federation services are working. It allowed me to connect in through my Active Directory through this instance of Federation services that are set up. So there are some additional configuration pieces once it's set up. And so I'm going to step through those. If I have, Bill, do I have 5 more minutes, if that?
Yes, I think so. I think some of the questions are being answered here. Some are being several parters, so I think we're okay. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. I think we're good. Keep going.
I'm going to step on over into, I believe I've got my management, my ADFS management. I'm going to find that here is probably something new. Yep, ADFS management just got installed. First of all, within here, we do need to, and this is actually part of the process of setting up the, let's see, which one is this? This is, we're going to edit my primary authentication, because we need to tell it we are going to do a certificate authentication. I'm sorry, back that up. I'm doing forms authentication. That's how it'll prompt me for a login. All right. It does need a session timeout value assigned to it. So there are actually, for my device registration service, there is a 400, by default, a 480-minute timeout set there. However, it's not set. It's set on one side but not the other. It's kind of weird. You should have to make these two pieces the same. And so if you were to actually run your PowerShell, and I believe I can just my service name was called Device Registration Service, and so I'm going to paste in, I think, copy and paste. So this is going to show me that my my token lifetime out is set to 0, which a 0 in this instance here actually means 60 minutes, which I'm not sure why, but anything I think less than 60 means 60 minutes. We are going to actually set that to 480 minutes, so it will end up matching the setup inside my ADFS. Let me show you those service properties, and now I'll show you that they're the same. And so the SSO lifetime is 480. That was already there before. However, the token lifetime for the certificate was actually set to only 60 minutes. And so setting those to the same is actually a requirement. And then we're just going to, a couple other last pieces of this. We're already in the management. We're going to create a certificate. So for our relying party trusts, services for certificates, I'm first going to actually export this one because I need to use it. And then I'm going to create an endpoint inside here. And so just like any other certificates, you have the ability to copy this to a file. So I'm going to make it a base 64. I'm going to put it in C/admin, and I'm going to call it adfs.cer. And put that anywhere you'd like. Make sure it's the right kind of file we're exporting. And I've now exported that certificate. This certificate will actually be used on your core technology server. You have to load this in SSO config, and those are part of the instructions, so that's why you need this here. And I think the final piece in here is creating your endpoint. And so under the relying party trusts, I'm going to add one. Okay, and start. Yes, that's what I want to do. I'm going to give it the address. I'm sorry, I'm going to actually make this where I'm going to enter the data all manually. And so I don't have any files that I can import. I guess I could create some of those. And so I'm going to have to answer a bunch more questions. They're quick and easy questions. But we're going to call this, for this sake, Infor Lawson 10 prod 2, since I already have a prod 1. And I didn't put any notes in there. We can put anything. These are my notes. Just to describe what this is. We are using an ADFS version, higher version of it. I'm not using version 1, I should say that. And nothing else I need to add here. And then finally, it wants me to put in my relying party protocol, what is going to be connecting in through this. And so I'm going to do a little test here. This would be lsf1.jksava.net, and then my SSO and SSO servlet. That's what is going to be connecting. I believe this is going to complain. So this is where I told you before, everything has to be SSL in order for it to, the services to work correctly here. And looks like it all went in there just fine. Don't need to add anything else. And not going to configure multi-factor. You can actually configure multi-factor authentication through ADFS. I'm going to permit all users access to this relying party. There are some security things you can do. We have not jumped into securing this anymore than just the login. And I think that's it. Well, you're good. Do I want to open this claims editor when I'm all done? Why not? And I think, oops, I closed that there. I didn't want to close that. And I want to change my endpoint issuance from don't remember where I just edited claim rules. I want to edit the claim rules. There we go. And so I need to add a new rule. This rule is going to let it know that we are going to send the LDAP attributes as claims. and it wants to know which attributes are we actually going to use. So I'm going to be, you can give it any kind of name, claim rule 1. We're going from Active Directory. I'm going to use the user principal name, right? Come on, it's supposed to come up. There it goes, taking its time. User principal name over to Windows. It's not coming up. Windows account name, and that's my claim rule. That will allow now my systems to talk to each other through the Active Directory using the user principal name. And as far as I'm concerned, on the ADFS side, we're done. We've got a certificate that's sitting out here waiting for us to load into the core technology side, which will be required. And if we wanted to look at that certificate, you can. We already saw it anyway. It's just a signing certificate, and ADFS is done and set up. So, Bill?
Yes. So, wow, that's great. Thanks, Todd.
Sure. Sorry about the
Good stuff.
a little bit there.
No, that's fine. It was 10 minutes instead of 5, but hey, that was pretty quick. So real quick on your questions, if there's any other additional, that's good. If there's any additional questions that you might have, please let us know, follow up, that kind of thing. Some of the questions in here, I mean, there was quite a few good questions. What I was thinking, for the sake of time, instead of going through them, we'll compile them in a list, and maybe include that with the some of the things that you asked for, like you mentioned, Todd, like the references handout and stuff like that, and maybe include that with the slide, if you guys would like that. If you would like that, real quick, can I get a show of hands if you are interested in the slides and some of that information? Boy, everybody seemed to shoot up hands right then. Okay, so that's good. That makes me feel a little better that we're giving you what you needed and so forth like that. So that's great. Thank you for that. So we'll go ahead and give that along with them. What I want to go into now real quick on the last thing is, one of the things we're trying to do is we're trying to add value to the community and in this, and that's why we do these webinars. And I was talking to Todd before the webinar saying, hey, how can we help them a little bit more? And so what we want to do is we kind of want to give you some kind of a review or an assessment, if you will, kind of your system, and kind of walk through some of that stuff. So we're willing to give that to you. It's usually about an hour, no more than 2 hours, but just something like that to just, if you're interested in that, for us to help you with that, we're definitely more than willing to give that to you, just to kind of make you feel good about where you're at, or even if you have questions about where you're at, that kind of thing. Just do an assessment or a review of that. So I'm going to have one of our marketing guys that kind of helped put this together. His name is Jacob Webster. He's going to send out an email to you as a follow-up to this, one with the recording, although there's choppy pieces in the recording, but that's okay. And then the second thing he's going to do is also get you that information if you would like it, and he's going to show you, give you instructions on how to get it. So that's going to be a follow-up to that. And if you would like that, like I said, if you'd like that help on the review or assessment of where you're at, and some Q&A time, then please, that'll be in there too. Just kind of follow the parameters of how to do that. So if that's about it for now, and we appreciate your time. So hopefully this was helpful. Be on the lookout for other webinars and so forth. If you've noticed, some of the webinars, we bring in partners and so forth as well, because we feel like what they bring is some value. We actually have one going to be coming up here pretty soon from GRM, Document Management Services. They do a full ECM system, electronic content management, and it's a pretty neat system that you might be of interest as well. So be on the lookout for that. and some other webinars that we have coming on. So that's it, everybody. Thank you so much for your time, and that's all.